Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. The air was heavy with the scent of autumn leaves as I walked down our quiet suburban street, returning home from a late shift. The crunch of the dry leaves underfoot was the only sound accompanying my thoughts. I remember how the dim streetlights cast long shadows, making the familiar neighborhood seem alien. As I approached our modest two-story house, something felt off. There, under the flickering glow of the street lamp, was a car that didn't belong. A sleek, black sedan, definitely not from our neighborhood. Eric's car. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Why was his car parked outside my house? I had met Eric, my wife and his coworker, a couple of times at company gatherings. He was the kind of guy who always had a charming smile and a joke at the ready. But seeing his car outside my house at this hour was no laughing matter. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking slightly. The house was dark, save for a faint light coming from the living room. I opened the door quietly, half expecting, half dreading to find something amiss. "Anna," I called out softly as I stepped inside. No answer. The silence hung in the air like a thick fog. I walked towards the living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight. There, curled up on the couch, was Anna, fast asleep with the TV on mute. My gaze shifted to the window, where I could see Eric's car through the thin curtains. A surge of emotions battled inside me: confusion, suspicion, anger. I needed answers, but I couldn't bring myself to wake her up. Instead, I sat down on the other end of the couch, my mind racing. The next morning, I brought it up over breakfast. Anna was stirring her coffee absent-mindedly when I asked, "Why was Eric's car parked outside our house last night?" Anna looked up, her expression unreadable for a moment before a look of surprise crossed her face. "Eric's car? What do you mean?" "I saw his car parked outside when I got home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but there was a noticeable edge to it. Anna let out a small laugh. "Oh, that. He had some car trouble yesterday and asked if he could leave it here for the night. I meant to tell you, but forgot." I nodded, but her explanation didn't sit right with me. "Car trouble? Huh? Did he say what was wrong?" She shrugged, something about the engine overheating. I didn't really ask for details. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had already planted its roots in my mind. And where was he? Why didn't he wait for a tow or something? "He got a ride back with another colleague." "Honestly, I didn't think it was a big deal," Anna replied, now looking a bit defensive. I stared at my half-eaten toast, the doubts swirling in my mind. The rest of the breakfast passed in an uncomfortable silence. Later that day, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. On a whim, I decided to call Eric under the guise of asking about a work-related issue. After a few rings, he answered. "Hey, Eric, it's me. Just wanted to check in about the Henderson project," I started, trying to sound casual. "Oh, yeah, everything is on track," Eric responded, his voice cheerful as usual. I hesitated for a moment before asking, "By the way, Anna mentioned your car had some trouble and you left it at our place. Anything serious?" There was a brief pause, and then Eric replied, "My car? No, it's been fine. Why do you ask?" I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. His answer was like a punch in the gut, confirming my worst fears. "Oh, just a mix-up, I guess. Thanks, Eric," I said quickly and hung up. As I put down the phone, my mind raced with possibilities. Anna's story wasn't adding up, and Eric's response had only deepened my suspicions. I needed to know the truth, but confronting her without any solid proof would only lead to denials and arguments. That evening, as I lay in bed next to Anna, pretending to be asleep, the decision was made. I would hire a private investigator. I needed to know what was going on, even if it meant uncovering a truth I wasn't ready to face. The thought of it filled me with a mix of dread and determination. But I had to know. I just had to. I remember staring at the business card of the private investigator, its edges frayed from the nervous twisting between my fingers. The decision to hire someone to spy on my wife was not one I took lightly. It felt like a betrayal, yet the gnawing doubt and Eric's unwitting contradiction left me no choice. I dialed the number. The PI, a man named Jacobs, had a voice that was gruff but professional. "Jacobs Investigations. How can I assist you?" I took a deep breath. I need to know if my wife is having an affair. There was a brief silence. "Understood. We'll need to discuss specifics. Can you meet in person?" We agreed to meet at a small diner off the highway, neutral ground. Jacobs was a middle-aged man, with eyes that had seen too much of the world's less savory side. Over coffee that tasted more like tar, I explained the situation. He listened, nodding occasionally, scribbling notes. I'll need a photo of your wife and this Eric, places they frequent, schedules, anything you can provide, Jacob said, his tone matter of fact. I handed him a photo of Anna and Eric from a company newsletter. I don't know much about where they go. I've been in the dark about all this. Jacobs tapped the photo. Don't worry. We'll start with surveillance, track her movements. You'll get regular updates. Leaving the diner, I felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. It was a point of no return. The following days were a blur of anxiety and feigned normalcy. Anna's behavior didn't change, her smile still as warm as before, making me feel even more conflicted. Each time Jacobs called with an update, my heart sank. They're spending a lot of time together. Lunches, late-night meetups. I'm still gathering concrete evidence, Jacobs reported one evening. I hung up and sat in the living room, the TV's murmur a faint backdrop to my racing thoughts. Anna joined me, snuggling up as if sensing my unease. Is everything okay? You seem distracted lately, she said, looking up at me with concern in her eyes. I forced a smile. Just work stuff. You know how it is. Her gaze lingered on me, searching, before she nodded and turned back to the TV. I wondered if she saw through my facade. A week later, Jacob's call was different. I have something you should see. Can you meet? We met at the same diner. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Photos and a report. They've been careful, but we got enough. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. The photos showed Anna and Eric together, laughing in a cafe, an intimate dinner at a restaurant, a hug that lingered too long. Each image was a stab in my heart. Is this enough for a divorce? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's substantial. But remember, I'm not a lawyer. Driving home, the world felt surreal. I was living a nightmare, but the hardest part was yet to come, confronting Anna. That night, as we lay in bed, the weight of the evidence burned in my mind. I turned to Anna, who was already asleep, her face peaceful. How could she be so tranquil amidst this storm? The next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. At breakfast, I slid the envelope across the table to her. I know about you and Eric, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Anna's eyes widened as she looked at the photos. Her face drained of color. I can explain, she stammered. Explain? How do you explain this, Anna? The hurt in my voice was palpable. It's not what it looks like. We're just friends. It's complicated, she pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. Friends don't do this, Anna. I trusted you. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I need time to think. I left the house, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, anger, sadness, it was all too much. I drove aimlessly, trying to make sense of it all. How had our life together come to this? Where did we go wrong? As I parked by a lake, watching the sun dance on the water's surface, the reality of my situation sank in. My marriage was over, and the path ahead was uncertain and daunting. But first, I had to deal with the aftermath of this revelation. The confrontation with Anna was inevitable, and I had to prepare myself for what was to come. The days following the revelation of Anna's affair were a blur of confusion and anger. I found myself wandering through our home, each room echoing with memories of a life I thought we had. The photos on the walls, once symbols of our love, now felt like cruel jokes. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal and, worse, the helplessness that came with it. It was during one of these aimless evenings that my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. I answered hesitantly. Hello, is this Anna's husband? A woman's voice asked. Her tone was cautious, yet there was an unmistakable edge of bitterness to it. Yes, speaking. Who is this? This is Beth, Eric's wife. I think we need to talk. My heart skipped a beat. Beth, how did you get my number? I got it from a friend who works at your wife's office. I've known about the affair for a while now. I've been trying to gather evidence. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. The idea that someone else was going through the same ordeal was both comforting and horrifying. Can we meet? I asked. I think we have a lot to discuss. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Beth was a tall woman with a stern face that softened when she saw me. We sat at a corner table, away from prying eyes. I've been collecting text messages and emails, Beth began, sliding her phone across the table. It's not much, but it's something. I scrolled through the messages, each word twisting the knife deeper. They were discussing their meetings, making plans, sharing jokes. It was all there, in black and white. I looked up at Beth, her eyes mirroring my pain. What are we going to do? Beth leaned back, her gaze steady. I've been thinking about that. What if we gave them a taste of their own medicine? Her suggestion took me aback. What do you mean? I mean, what if we start our own affair? Let them feel what we've been feeling. The idea was outrageous, yet it held a certain appeal. A way to regain control, to strike back at those who had hurt us. Do you think that would make them understand? I asked, the idea slowly taking root in my mind. It's not just about making them understand. It's about reclaiming our power in this situation. We've been the victims, but we don't have to stay that way. Her words resonated with me. The thought of being more than just the betrayed husband was empowering. We'll need to be careful, I said. If we're going to do this, it can't backfire on us. Agreed. Beth nodded. It's not about sinking to their level. It's about showing them the consequences of their actions. We spent the next hour devising a plan. We would meet publicly at first, just as friends. Gradually, we would make our meetings more frequent, be seen in places where word would get back to Anna and Eric. The first few meetings were awkward. We were two wounded souls, brought together by the betrayal of those we trusted most. But as we shared our stories, a strange bond began to form. We understood each other's pain, the sense of loss, the anger. One evening, as we sat in a dimly lit restaurant, Beth reached across the table and took my hand. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "It's hard," I admitted. "Seeing Anna every day, knowing what she's done. It's like living with a stranger." "I know what you mean," Beth sighed. "Eric acts like nothing's changed. It's maddening." As we talked, I noticed people glancing our way, whispering. The rumor mill had begun to churn. Part of me felt guilty, but another part felt a sense of vindication. This was just the beginning. Our meetings became more frequent. We were careful, always mindful of the image we were projecting. We wanted our spouses to notice, but we weren't ready for the full confrontation yet. Then, one evening, as Beth and I walked through a local park, we ran into a couple of Anna's friends. Their surprised expressions were exactly what we had hoped for. "Hello," I greeted them, my arm casually draped around Beth's shoulder. "Is this your new girlfriend?" one of them asked, her voice tinged with shock and curiosity. Beth and I exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between us. "Something like that," I replied, giving a noncommittal smile. The friends exchanged glances, their curiosity unsatisfied but their interest clearly piqued. As they walked away, I knew word would get back to Anna. The thought gave me a conflicted sense of satisfaction and dread. Over the next few days, the atmosphere at home changed. Anna became more withdrawn, her eyes often following me with a mix of confusion and suspicion. I could tell she was hearing things but wasn't sure what to believe. One night, as we sat in silence after dinner, Anna finally spoke up. "Are you seeing someone?" Her voice was small, almost afraid. I paused, weighing my words. "Why do you ask?" "People are talking. They've seen you with someone, with Eric's wife." I met her gaze, holding back the turmoil inside. "Maybe I am. Does it matter to you?" Anna's face crumpled, a mix of guilt and hurt flashing across her eyes. I don't know what to think." "That makes two of us," I replied, standing up from the table. "I've had a lot of time to think lately." As I walked away, I could feel Anna's eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. The game had changed, and I was no longer just the betrayed husband. I was a player in this twisted game of revenge and deceit. Beth and I continued our facade, each meeting a carefully crafted display for the audience we knew was watching. But amidst the pretense, something real was forming between us. Shared pain had given way to understanding, and understanding was blossoming into something that felt dangerously like affection. Yet, amidst this growing connection, the initial purpose of our actions lingered in the background. We were bound by our mutual desire for revenge, a bond forged in the fires of betrayal. The line between our act and reality was blurring, and with each passing day, the consequences of our charade became more unpredictable. As the chapter of revenge unfolded, the future remained uncertain, filled with questions and the looming confrontation with our spouses. But one thing was clear: the path we had chosen was irreversible, and the endgame was rapidly approaching. The game of revenge that Beth and I had embarked on was spinning faster and faster, like a carousel that had lost control. With each passing day, the line between our act and reality blurred even more. I found myself looking forward to our meetings, not just for the plan, but for the solace we found in each other's company. One evening, as we sat in a dimly lit bar, our conversation took a turn. Beth slid her phone across the table to me. "I found these," she said, her voice a mix of anger and hurt. "Text between Eric and Anna." I took the phone hesitantly, scrolling through the messages. My heart sank as I read their words, mocking Beth, making cruel jokes about her. There were even jibes about me, poking fun at my fertility issues. It was a new level of betrayal, far deeper than I had imagined. How could they be so cruel? I muttered, feeling a mix of rage and disbelief. Beth reached out, touching my hand gently. They're selfish, lost in their own world. They don't see the damage they're doing. I looked up at her, seeing my own pain reflected in her eyes. I never knew Anna could be like this. It's like I don't even know her anymore. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our discovery hanging heavy between us. Finally, Beth spoke up. What are we going to do now? I shook my head slowly. I don't know, but we can't let them get away with this. The following days were a mix of planning and reckoning. Our facade continued, but now it was fueled by a deeper sense of purpose. We were no longer just two scorned spouses. We were allies in a fight against the cruelty that had been dealt to us. It wasn't long before our spouses began to react. Anna confronted me one evening, her eyes red from crying. Is this your revenge? Is this how you punish me? I looked at her, the woman I had loved, now a stranger to me. It's not about revenge, Anna. It's about understanding. You've hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe. She reached out to me, but I stepped back. I'm sorry, I truly am. I never meant to hurt you. Sorry doesn't change what you did, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Meanwhile, Eric had confronted Beth, his anger boiling over. She told me about it the next day, her face etched with frustration. He accused me of being petty, of trying to ruin his life. He doesn't see the irony in his words. The spiral of betrayal was pulling everyone deeper into its vortex. Our lives, once intertwined in love, were now entangled in a web of lies, deceit, and pain. One night, Beth and I met in a secluded spot, a quiet park away from the eyes of the town. We sat on a bench, the moon casting long shadows around us. I never thought it would go this far, I confessed, looking out at the darkened landscape. Beth sighed, neither did I. But here we are. We're playing with fire, I said, a sense of foreboding washing over me. Beth turned to look at me, her eyes intense in the moonlight. Maybe we are. But isn't it better than being the ones getting burned? Her words struck a chord in me. We had started this as a means of coping, of dealing with our pain. But now, it was taking on a life of its own. The next day, things took a dramatic turn. I returned home to find Anna waiting for me. She was holding a letter from a lawyer, detailing her intentions to file for divorce. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I can't do this anymore. This, whatever this is, it's destroying us. I took the letter, a sense of finality washing over me. It was already destroyed. Anna, you did that when you chose him over us. She shook her head. I thought I could fix it, but I was wrong. I'm so sorry. I wanted to feel triumphant, to feel vindicated. But all I felt was a hollow emptiness. This wasn't a victory. It was the end of a chapter of my life that I had once held dear. As Anna left the house, I sat down, the letter in my hands. The future was uncertain, the path ahead murky. The revenge that had started as a fiery blaze was now smoldering ashes, leaving behind the charred remains of relationships that once meant everything to me. Beth and I met less frequently after that. Our conversations were tinged with a sadness, a recognition of the cost of our actions. We had sought to right the wrongs done to us, but in doing so, we had wandered into a labyrinth of moral ambiguities. One evening, as we sat together, a comfortable silence between us, Beth spoke up. Where do we go from here? I looked at her, her face illuminated by the setting sun. I don't know, Beth, but I think it's time we find out who we are outside of this mess. She nodded, a small smile on her lips. Yeah, I think you're right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the world, I realized that the journey ahead was mine to make. The betrayal had changed me, molded me into someone new. But it was time to step out of the shadows of revenge and into the light of self-discovery and healing. The days that followed were like walking through a fog, each step uncertain and heavy. The unraveling of my marriage to Anna, the affair with Beth, it all felt like a tangled web I was desperately trying to escape from. My house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with the ghosts of a life that used to be. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the silence was broken by a knock at the door. It was Beth. She looked distraught, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Without a word, I let her in. Eric knows, she blurted out as soon as we sat down. About us. He confronted me. He was furious. I leaned forward, my mind racing. What did you tell him? I couldn't lie anymore, Beth said, her voice breaking. I admitted it. but I told him it was his affair that drove me to it. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of our actions. This is spiraling out of control. Beth. Beth nodded, her eyes meeting mine. I know. I never wanted it to get this far. But I was so angry, so hurt. We sat in silence, the air heavy with unspoken regrets. Finally, I spoke up. What are we going to do now? Beth sighed, a look of resignation on her face. I don't know, but I can't keep doing this. It's destroying me. The next day, things took an even more dramatic turn. I received a call from Anna's lawyer, informing me that she wanted to meet to discuss the terms of the divorce. The finality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. I agreed to the meeting, which was set in a sterile conference room. Anna was there, looking as lost and tired as I felt. We sat at opposite ends of the table, the lawyers between us. Let's get straight to the point, Anna's lawyer began. We want an amicable divorce. No dragging each other through the mud. I glanced at Anna. Her eyes were downcast, avoiding mine. I agree, I said. There's no point in making this any harder than it needs to be. The lawyers went back and forth, discussing assets, the house, and other technicalities. I felt detached, like I was watching the scene from a distance. As the meeting ended, Anna lingered. Can we talk? Alone, she asked, her voice barely audible. The lawyers left, and we were alone in the cold room. Anna looked up at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. I nodded, the anger and hurt welling up inside me. You did, though. You turned our life into a lie. I know, Anna whispered, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. We left the meeting in silence, the final chapter of our marriage written in the sterile words of legal documents. In the days that followed, the reality of my situation sank in. I was alone, the future uncertain. The affair with Beth, born out of a desire for revenge, had ended as suddenly as it began. We had both realized the futility of our actions, the pain it was causing not just to our spouses, but to ourselves. I met with Beth one last time. We sat in the same park where we had plotted our revenge, the autumn leaves swirling around us. This is it, then, Beth said, her voice steady. Yeah, I replied. It's time to move on. To heal. We said our goodbyes, a sense of closure hanging in the air. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of freedom. The chains of betrayal and revenge had been broken, leaving me to rebuild my life from the ashes. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the fog began to lift. I started to pick up the pieces of my life, focusing on myself, my work, and rediscovering who I was beyond the pain and the anger. The house, once a symbol of shared dreams and love, now felt too big, too empty. I decided to sell it, to start fresh somewhere new. I often found myself driving without a destination, just letting the road take me where it would. On one of these aimless drives, I ended up at the beach. I walked along the shore, the sound of the waves crashing against the sand soothing my troubled thoughts. As I sat there, watching the sunset, I thought about everything that had happened. The affair, the revenge, the divorce, it all seemed like a distant storm that had passed, leaving a calm but changed landscape in its wake. I realized then that the unraveling of my marriage was not just the end of a chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new one. A chance to start over, to learn from my mistakes, to find happiness in my own terms. The journey back to myself was not easy. There were days when the loneliness was overwhelming, nights when the silence of the house was deafening. But with time, I began to appreciate the quiet, to enjoy my own company. I started to reconnect with old friends, to take up hobbies I had long neglected. I rediscovered my love for photography, capturing moments of beauty and tranquility that contrasted sharply with the turmoil of the past months. One evening, as I was going through some old boxes, I came across a photo album from my early days with Anna. Flipping through it, I felt a pang of nostalgia, but not the sharp sting of pain I had expected. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to the anger and the hurt was only holding me back. As the weeks turned into months, I found a new rhythm to my life. A sense of normalcy returned, a new normal that was different but not unwelcome. I had grown, learned, and healed. The last chapter of my marriage had been a dark one, but it had led to a new beginning, a chance to write a new story, one where I was the author. The path ahead was still unclear, but for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to seeing where it would take me. The day I signed the papers finalizing my divorce from Anna, the sky was a canvas of brooding clouds, mirroring the turmoil that had churned inside me for months. The lawyer's office was sterile, the air thick with the finality of what was happening. I signed my name with a steady hand, but my heart felt anything but steady. Are you okay? the lawyer asked, his voice tinged with professional concern. I managed a small smile. As okay as one can be in this situation. Leaving the office, the reality of my newfound freedom was both liberating and daunting. The chapter of my life that included Anna was officially closed, but the pages ahead were blank, waiting to be written. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and hobbies with a fervor I hadn't felt in years. Photography became more than just a pastime. It was a lifeline, connecting me to the world in ways I had forgotten were possible. One afternoon, while out on a photo shoot in the city, I ran into an old friend, Mark. He was surprised to see me, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. Hey, long time no see. How have you been? Mark asked, clapping me on the back. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. It's been a journey. Went through a divorce. Mark's expression turned sympathetic. I'm sorry to hear that. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. I nodded, grateful for the offer. Thanks, Mark. I might take you up on that. Our brief encounter was a reminder of the connections I still had, the friendships that had been overshadowed by my marital troubles. As spring turned to summer, the world around me blossomed, and so did I. I began to venture out more, reconnecting with friends and family, even going on a few casual dates. The idea of starting a new relationship was daunting, but I was slowly warming up to it. One evening, I found myself at a local art exhibit, a collection of landscape photography that I had been eager to see. As I wandered among the stunning displays, I was drawn to a particular photograph of a sunlit meadow, the light and shadows playing a mesmerizing dance. That's my favorite piece in the exhibit, a voice said from behind me. I turned to find a woman, around my age, with an easy smile and bright eyes that reflected a love for the art on display. Mine too, I replied, returning her smile. There's something about the way the light is captured. It's breathtaking. We struck up a conversation, effortlessly moving from discussing photography to sharing snippets of our lives. Her name was Claire, and she too had recently gone through a challenging period in her life. As the evening wore on, we found ourselves sitting in a cozy coffee shop, the initial connection deepening into a comfortable rapport. Claire's laughter was infectious, her perspective on life refreshing. I haven't felt this light in a long time, I confessed as we said our goodbyes. Neither have I, Claire admitted. Would you like to do this again sometime? I would like that, I said, feeling a flicker of excitement at the prospect. The days that followed were filled with a new energy. Claire and I saw each other regularly, exploring the city, sharing our passions, and slowly peeling back the layers of our pasts. There was an ease between us, a mutual understanding that what we had was new and fragile, yet filled with potential. During this time, I also finalized the sale of the house. It was bittersweet, walking through the empty rooms, each corner filled with echoes of a life that once was. But it was also a cleansing experience, letting go of the past, making room for new beginnings. I moved into a smaller, cozier apartment in a vibrant part of the city. The change of environment was like a breath of fresh air, infusing new life into my daily routine. The walls of the apartment slowly filled with my photographs, each one a testament to the beauty I was rediscovering in the world around me. One evening, Claire came over for dinner. As she looked around the apartment, her eyes lingered on the photographs. You have a real talent, she said, admiring a photo of a sunset over the city. Thank you, I replied, feeling a sense of pride. Photography has been my way of reconnecting with the world. We sat down to eat, the conversation flowing easily between us. It was comfortable and real, a far cry from the strained interactions of my previous life. As the evening drew to a close, Claire reached across the table, taking my hand. I'm really glad I met you, she said, her eyes sincere. So am I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. You've brought a lot of joy into my life. After Claire left, I sat on the balcony looking out at the city lights. The journey from betrayal and heartbreak to this moment of peace and contentment had been long and arduous, but it had led me to a place of healing and growth. I realized that moving on wasn't just about leaving the past behind. It was about embracing the future, whatever it may hold. I had found new love, not just in a romantic sense, but love for life and all its possibilities. The road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew there would be challenges, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face them. With each passing day, I was writing a new chapter in my life, one filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings. As I turned in for the night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The pain of the past was slowly fading, replaced by the excitement of the future. I was moving on, not just surviving, but thriving. The story of my life was still being written, and I was eager to see where the next chapter would take me.